What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Average Bob. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to dive into the 2020 NFL draft that the Giants just have. I'm pretty pumped about it, to be completely honest with you. This went, in the direction I don't want to toot my own horn too much on it, but I was kind of right about this when I did my Jaxson Dart video about potentially being the next Giants quarterback 2 months ago. So I'll put the video up ahead. You can go click on it and watch it again later, just to get a little bit more insight to why the Giants took Jaxson Dart. And I'll kind of touch on it a little bit in this video as well. But I'm pumped as I could possibly be about this. I think most Giants fans are pretty excited too. There are some that are super negative about it. They didn't want to trade up for Jaxson Dart. I'll touch on that in a little bit, but let's get started. I mean, this is a culture building draft. This is one that Joe Schoen had to nail. I think he did. Obviously, with drafts and stuff, we'll have to look and see what time will obviously tell, right? But right now, on first glimpse, 3 overall, you got a game-changing stud edge rusher in Abdul Carter out of Penn State. And I'm glad he was there for us because with the New York Giants, historically, when the Giants have been good, part of their culture has been edge rushers. They added to this a couple years ago when they drafted Kayvon Thibodeau. They also had Azeez Ojulari for a little bit, who was never consistent. They've tried to draft edge guys. It just hasn't worked out. They had Lorenzo Carter for a little bit a couple years ago. And then most recently, they added Brian Burns through a trade with the Panthers, brought him in, signed him to a very high deal. Then you've completed sort of that edge rushing build of having dog after dog after dog by taking Abdul Carter third overall. Everything you watch from this guy on tape looks amazing. He's a pure athlete, and that's something that I don't think we've had in quite some time. Like Burns seems like a great athlete, but again, a little bit on the skinnier side. And like, look at the picture of like Abdul Carter's neck. It's like when he's just standing there for a normal photo, you're like, this guy is big on a different level. So I'm really excited. Bowen's back as defensive coordinator after a pretty shitty, rough first season. So I'm hoping that everyone else that has been around for last year and suffered through what happened last season, where I honestly didn't think our defense was as, I don't know, could have been more of a bigger problem. It wasn't good, obviously, and especially in key moments in games. But I think adding Abdul Carter to this defense instantly upgrades us 100%. So adding a great starter to your defense and someone who could get to the quarterback is one of the key things to win football games in the NFL. That's a huge win for the Giants. Excited to get him in. And obviously, the bar is set high for guys that come into this position. Edge rushers, guys who get the quarterback, Lawrence Taylor, Michael Strahan, OCU Minora, Justin Tuck. Can he be the next Giants legend? Well, he'd have to add a Lombardi next to his name. But, that's something that when the Giants have been successful and winning Super Bowls, it's been a key piece of that has been their pass rush. And the Giants having pass rush and defensive front has got significantly better this draft, plugged holes, added weapons. So I'm excited about what this defense is becoming, the culture shifting, and now we're getting swaggy ballers. Moving ahead to the next one is Jaxson Dart. So this was an interesting one. The Giants did trade up with Houston for this pick to get to 25 overall to draft Jaxson Dart, making him the second quarterback off the board. And there was so much back and forth about Shedeur Sanders that I'm going to do a whole separate video about him and why he didn't go to the Giants. But touched about Jaxson Dart. This was something I said 2 months ago, and a lot of it was based around his connection with the Giants and Eli Manning and Archie Manning and being an Ole Miss quarterback and getting a good solid college pedigree. I think he started at USC, then went to Ole Miss and was under Lane Kiffin, who, say what you want about the guy, he's been around football his entire life, and he coached him up well and got him to get drafted in the first round of the draft. So a lot of people are like, oh, you could have had him in the second or third round. Not exactly true, which he wouldn't have gotten in their second or third round. So it means you can extend the lifespan of not having to pay your quarterback, even though if you're a really good quarterback, you could usually get a deal done before it gets to that point. Even if he doesn't, it's a pretty good spot for them to be. So I will totally take it. Jaxson Dart probably is not going. I would be very surprised if we saw him play this next season, unless things go really bad for Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, which he has the potential to do. Is the last 2 seasons we've seen a combined 7 different quarterbacks play over the last 2 seasons. So, if we're going off recent trends, then Maybe we'll see Dart play later this year if injuries and poor performances pile up, which again the last 2 years they have. But I think this seems to be like a project that Brian Dable wants to invest in for a long term. Let him learn from guys like Russell Wilson, guys like Jameis Winston, who, Russell Wilson's like an 8-time Pro Bowler and has won a Super Bowl. Jameis is Jameis. He's a locker room guy and a leader. A lot of teams, when they draft these young guys, like especially high in the draft, and usually they're on like the worst teams, right? Like the Titans or the Browns, where they're constantly picking up there, the Jets too, where they're taking these guys, and there's no veteran leadership in that locker room. Where immediately off the bat here, by not taking Jaxson Dart at 3rd overall, we added Abdul Carter, making our defense instantly better, and now we have a guy that doesn't need to be thrown into the fire day one, year one, week one. And the same thing also worked for Eli Manning back in the day, right? When the Giants drafted Eli Manning, they had also brought in Kurt Warner, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams, and also had a guy, Jesse Palmer, the Bachelor. So there was a good quarterback room. I think, obviously, this quarterback room is drastically different, but in a similar way, it helps to have guys that have been around the league for a while, have had success, who have dealt with big media. Even, I think Tommy DeVito might be able to shed a little bit of light into the New York and national media scene that Jaxson Dart will have to get used to. So maybe he could give him some tips, even though, Tommy DeVito will probably never be playing much for the Giants again, which is totally fine in my book. But, and I think what's also good about this is what it's so different compared to like when the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers, right? He fell to the end, I think, of like the first round. They take him. Brett Favre's there. Brett Favre immediately, he's like, it's not my job to make Aaron Rodgers the quarterback of this franchise, and was a dick to him, admittedly. And you've seen this in documentaries. He was in the Netflix documentary too, where like Brett Favre was like, Aaron, I was nice to you, right? Aaron Rodgers is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, you were nice. You're losing your mind and shit. But I think, there's something to be said about having a good veteran quarterback presence for young guys to learn from, not be thrown into the fire. Like look at Bryce Young 2 years ago on the Panthers. They threw him in. They had nothing. His confidence got absolutely destroyed, and they ended up at the first pick again in the next year's draft. So, and like wherever you go around the league and you look at these things, like Zach Wilson getting drafted by the Jets 2 overall, very high bar, high standard. You have to change the culture. You have to change the franchise. And here's the thing: you have to do it all by yourself. Jaxson Dart doesn't have that pressure right now. And I think that's an absolute win for the way that the Giants went about this, considering 2 months ago there was just Tommy DeVito signed to this team. I think I'm going to end up doing individual videos about all these topics because I am so passionately happy about this right now. But next up on the list as we transition to another dog on the defensive line that the Giants drafted in the 3rd round, 65 overall, Darius Alexander, defensive tackle of Toledo. Guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think most of us, unless we're, our cousin or we know someone who's playing football at Toledo, not really watching any Toledo games. I bet people in Toledo aren't really watching many Toledo games. But having said that, watching some of his highlights, he looks like he is extremely athletic. And I love what he had to say when he was in front of the media for the first time. He talked about he loves to take the will out of the offensive lineman that he's playing, deliver a lot of pain. This is going to slide in very nicely. Darius Alexander is going to slide in very nicely next to Dexter Lawrence in a spot that really hasn't been filled in quite some time, right? When the Giants, again, going back to trading for Leonard Williams that time, Leonard Williams, he did a lot of things that you didn't really necessarily see on a stat sheet, which is probably why he has a career earnings of over $100 million at this point without any sacks to show for it. So with that, when the Giants lost Leonard Williams, they never backfilled for it, and people would just gash us for 4 or 5 yards a clip. And there was no they tried to add some guys like Ashaw Robinson and Elijah Chapman last year. He was like undrafted, I'm pretty sure, but like he had a fun story, so you wanted to root for him, and he did get to play. Like not good. So I think investing in a guy 3rd round defensive tackle to come in and you get paired up with sexy Dexy, like Dexter is in his prime, top 2 player in that position in the NFL, maybe the best, honestly. But I've been hyping him for the last few years now. If you've watched this channel for long enough, especially in the game film breakdowns, but he's a great veteran leader. He is really like the only leader on this team. Let's call a spade a spade. So bringing in a rookie to learn from him is an absolute no-brainer. To work with him, it's someone that could shed a lot onto him. And again, I think it's a win. It's an immediate need fill at that other position on the defensive line, interior defensive line. And this guy seems like an athlete for as big as he is. So again, win by Joe Schoen, 100%. And now this was one interesting, in my previews for the draft, I really only talked about what I thought would happen in the first round. I didn't go too big, like, hey, should I mock 2 and 3, then 4 and 7? Because this was someone I probably would have spoken about. I guess now it's easy to say in hindsight. I definitely would have spoken about a sick running back who played really good against Texas in the fucking college football championship, or in the playoffs, and he was someone on that list. Cam Skattebo, guy's an absolute stud baller. If you need any evidence of that, go back, watch the film of him versus Texas. He kind of puts the team on his back, And here's the thing: there's no doubt that he is a good football player, right? And that's a win, I think, for the Giants, getting guys that are proven to be good football players. Year over year, the Giants would take guys that are either projects or you're like, oh, he could be good. Or, Cam Skattebo was good across the board. He could catch the ball out of the backfield. He could run really well. And it's going to pair nicely with Tyrone Tracy there because now the whole load isn't on Tyrone Tracy. And you could tell Motor Singletary to kick bricks. I'll tell him that. Take his $4.5 million, go right off into the sunset or go somewhere else because he obviously never did a good enough job in his tenure with the Giants so far. But now you have 2 young running backs who have very underrated running backs. Guys, Skattebo obviously got a lot of media buzz for his performances this season. Tyrone Tracy didn't coming out of college at all. It was kind of a question mark, but he slid in really nicely to the role that they put him in that Giants offense, going for over 1,000 combined receiving and rushing yards. So they needed to find someone else to fit that role kind of next to him that wasn't Singletary, or obviously they didn't see what they liked out of Eric Gray at this point in time. So adding Cam Skattebo in the 4th round, that's another win for us, a playmaker. And that's where you got to find some diamonds in the rough. I feel like it's been so long since the Giants were able to draft guys outside of, even in the first round, right? Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, 2 top 10 picks, both okay, like not game changers, right? So I feel like it's been quite some time since the Giants have had consistency in later rounds where guys that could come in and even fill those, gaps and be successful and build through the draft what you need to do and find these diamonds in the rough. And Cam Skattebo has been a diamond that's been shining more brightly other than, like, say, Tyrone Tracy when he was coming out. But again, adding to the offense, steps in the future for the right direction, and I love it. The next 3 going up in the 5th round, 154th overall from the Seahawks, Marcus Mbow, offensive line for Purdue. Again, Tyrone Tracy Jr. is pretty happy to be reunited with someone, obviously, he had played with at Purdue. I really don't know too much about Mbow, M-B-O-W. And I think the Giants' offensive line is kind of set in stone. But what I did like what I saw in the highlights of this guy is that he could play multiple positions across the offensive line and be versatile. So that's what they need because guys get banged up, guys get hurt. The only person to play every single game last season was 35-year-old Greg Van Roten. So the more guys that we get into this room and can try and figure out from a coaching perspective how to get these guys on the right track is a win. So, it had to be added to. I'm never against ever adding offensive linemen and with the hope, someone could turn it into something at this point. It's just a weird, maybe I could do a whole video about offensive line play in college and the NFL because it has been such a huge drop off over the last few years across the board, not just for the Giants, but the Giants particularly bad. Then in the 7th round, the Giants had 2 picks. Thomas Fidone is Fidone. Liked what I saw in his highlights, tight end from Nebraska. Big, strong, burly Nebraska tight end. Just saw one post about how that he does his own tattoos, which is pretty insane. But yeah, so you'll add him to the tight end room with Theo Johnson coming back off injury. Daniel Bellinger still there as well. I'm a belly bro. but it seems to be that his time with Big Blue could be approaching, the twilight there. Is they're adding. They also re-signed Chris Manhertz, who is like, whatever. That guy's, I think he's like my age and hasn't really done all too much in his NFL career. So there's your 4 tight ends right there. And yeah, looking for someone to step up, because the Giants obviously love Theo Johnson. So that opens a gap for who could be the second one. And maybe the second person can eclipse Theo Johnson, because he got hurt last year, and who really knows? I mean, it is hard to take. And I've said this a lot last season. I was like, taking stuff with a grain of salt, because everything was so bad last year. It's hard to know what was pretty real, especially with horrific quarterback play. So later on at the 246 overall pick was Korie Black, cornerback from Oklahoma State. Haven't had some time to watch his highlights yet, but again, adding more depth in the secondary is something that you can never go wrong with, especially with the amount of injuries that have happened there over the years. I am pretty happy with the additions to the secondary the last few years. Between you drafted Deonte Banks, first year was okay, last year kind of sucked. You put a little bit of a Band-Aid over that, and not knowing what that question mark might be with Banks being good, by signing someone like Skattebo from the Saints to come in. Again, kind of a question mark. We'll see how he is as well. I mean, we don't have a lockdown cornerback on this team, which is usually crucial for success. But I don't know. I guess when's the last time the Giants had a good cornerback, to be completely honest with you? Like, they have had guys who have been successful, but not like not like a Sauce Gardner, not like a Darrelle Revis. Like, Corey Webster was okay, but I feel like it's been like quite some time at this point. And that, after Dory Jackson left in this offseason, they just need more bodies there. And Korie Black could fit in there. Maybe he'll beat out guys like Cordell Flott. They also added Tyler Nubin through the draft last year, Drew Phillips. So there's a lot of competition in the secondary. And guys, again, competition breeds people bringing the cream to the cream will rise, whatever analogy I want to use here that is evading me. But again, I think this draft went as good as possible. I'm extremely happy about it. The negativity and stuff towards it kind of just pisses me off, but maybe because I'm just like an eternal optimist for this team every single time with the draft, that maybe I have my blinders on. So what do you guys think? How did the Giants do in this draft? Was there someone that you liked? Did you love trading up for Dart, or were you against it? And how do you think Joe Schoen and Dable handled this one? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your upcoming week.